psychologists to begin. So, Amy and Louise, if you'd like to join us.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. I'm on my mobile phone and struggling a little bit with some of the controls, so thanks for that. So yes, my name's Amy Howells and my colleague Louise Evans is on the call as well tonight. So thanks for inviting us to come along to talk just very briefly. We've only got 4 slides to just think a little bit with you about some of the psychological aspects of nutrition and eating. And to start with, we just wanted to say that some of what we're going to be talking about can sometimes trigger some unexpected emotional responses. We're going to be touching on a little bit around the psychology of eating. So we just wanted to say that please look after yourself during these brief few slides and do what you need to do in order to look after yourself during this brief introduction to some of the issues around the psychology of eating. So over to Louise.
So part of what we wanted to highlight is that we all have an emotional relationship with food. So it's normal for us to want to celebrate with food or comfort ourselves with food after a particularly difficult day. But for people who struggle with weight management, that can then be associated with high levels of shame, which has been linked with anxiety and depression. So people get into a bit of a cycle with using food in the wrong way and then beat themselves up about it. So all of this makes it much more likely to continue that emotional eating behaviour, which can be so detrimental. On top of that, we know that weight issues have a lot of stigma in healthcare. So people consistently tell us that they go to appointments and they get called out on their weight, they get shamed or feel shamed. They're told that they can't have particular treatments due to being overweight. They have to wait. Things are contingent on them doing their bit. And when they can't do that, they feel really guilty. And I think we all hold certain beliefs about weight, overweight particularly. We criticise ourselves that we should be more in control with food. We criticise the way we look. And subconsciously, we do it to others as well. And I think that's true of absolutely all of us, including healthcare professionals. There's a unconscious bias against people that are overweight or struggling to lose weight. And again, it just compounds our sense of shame that we can't do something about it ourselves.
Okay, so I think we could move on a couple of slides. So I think that was the slide Louise was just talking to. And so, yes, finally, we just wanted to touch on, I suppose, lots of what we can do in what Louise is describing is kind of centre that blame and guilt towards ourselves. But what we know is that it's actually so much more complicated than just being about us individually. So lots of research is highlighting how sometimes this is also about what we're born with. So the biological influences in terms of our genes, but also the environment that we've grown up in or that we exist in now day to day. The social, the environmental factors also influence how we feel and think about these things. So it's quite complicated. It's not just about an individual level, it's about many more things. So I think it's important that we recognise that, because that broadens it a little bit further than just being about us individually. And we also wanted to just highlight that, of course, living with chronic kidney disease and chronic health complicates it further, because people, as I'm sure we're going to go on to hear about, have restrictions on diet, having a kidney-friendly diet and how important that is. And also the nature of living with chronic health and the impact that that can have on our ability to be mobile, to maintain our fitness levels, and how sustainable that is for trying to lose weight if people need to do that to reach certain goals. So hopefully that's just a very kind of brief but broad overview of some of the complexity that's involved with thinking about the psychology of eating and nutrition. I don't know if you want to add anything else, Louise, at that point.
No, I think that's all we wanted to get across in this little introduction.
That's great. Thank you both so much for joining us today.
Yeah.
So I'm going to hand over now to Kay, Dr. Kay Chandler, our nutritionist and lead renal dietitian at Morrison Hospital. So Kay, if you're ready, feel free to come on.
Thank you, Georgia, and thank you to Louise and Amy. So yeah, my name's Kay. I'm a dietitian over in Morrison, and I've been working now in the kidney and renal area now for 5 years. So we're starting off with the question of, is what you eat important when you have kidney problems? So the very simple answer is yes, but just in the way that what anyone eats is really important. But this particularly becomes important for people who do have chronic health problems, with kidney disease being one of them. So I believe the question we have is, well, why is this the case? So why is it important what we eat when we have kidney problems? So there's lots of reasons, but I like to think of it in two main categories. So the first thing to think about is that diet, and when I talk about diet through this, it's really important to think about, we're not talking about diets as somebody's on a diet who needs to lose weight, but just the term diet in itself referring to what we eat on a day-to-day basis. So diet can have a role in terms of keeping your kidneys as healthy as possible for as long as possible, and sort of trying to prevent some kidney damage or kidney problems. And this is particularly important when we think of other conditions which can have an effect on your kidneys. So diet can help support or help prevent things like high blood pressure, diabetes, so cardiovascular disease, so heart problems. So that's one way in sort of diet can help prevent and keep your kidneys healthy. And the second reason why what we eat is important with kidney problems is because people who have kidney problems can suffer with sort of consequences or symptoms of that. And some of those are down to the fact that our kidneys would normally filter our blood, so things can build up in our blood, or we have things in our blood that we need. But if your kidneys aren't working as well as possible, your kidneys may not be able to get rid of some of this excess of things. And people may or may not be familiar with words like potassium, phosphate, urea. And sometimes if your kidneys can't get rid of those things, then it can have a consequence. It can cause you some harm. And that's where diet comes in. So if we can help people, support them in making dietary choices that may result in sort of limiting some of those things as appropriate, then that can help your kidneys. So diet can help support your kidneys and prevent some kidney damage, as well as supporting the consequences of having kidney problems. So that leads us on to think then, okay, well, should everyone with kidney problems just eat the same thing, follow the same diet? Now, this links back to the really important points that Louise and Amy were talking about at the start. We all have a different relationship with food, and we all need to eat, and food is really important to a lot of us. Some people eat just because they have to, but that's not the majority of us. And lots of people have different likes, dislikes, as well as different kidney diagnosis, as in what's caused their kidney problems, as well as being at different stages of chronic kidney disease. So it's not about one thing fits everyone. It's all about sort of what is appropriate for you at the right time. So we're going to move on a little bit to think about some sort of true or falses. So the first thing that we've got here is something I hear a lot of people tell me. They say, right, Kay, I know I've got kidney problems. I've been told I've stopped eating bananas. And I've used this as an example because this is a message that comes across a lot. Now, bananas have something called potassium in. And for some people with kidney problems, potassium can be an issue. But what isn't the problem here is the banana itself. And what we want to do as dietitians or nutritionists is support patients in understanding what's in their food and knowing when they need to maybe be careful of certain things. But very rarely do we want people to take things out completely. And I think people sometimes are worried that they're going to get lists of foods that they can't eat anymore or shouldn't be eaten. And again, because we all have a relationship with food, that can be really daunting or really disappointing and affect sometimes our quality of life. So it's never a case, or very rarely a case, that we want people to stop eating certain things altogether. And I've used bananas here as the most common culprit that people talk to me about. So I would argue that one's false. Next one, please. So this is another thing that people say to us a lot, is a lot of nutritional advice contradicts itself. And it can definitely feel like that. And we talked earlier about that sometimes kidney disease doesn't come by itself. Some people might have diabetes, they might have cholesterol problems, some people may have high blood pressure, or maybe they've been told about potassium and then something else called phosphate in their diet. And they've been given things to do or looked up things to do, and very quickly everything becomes very overwhelming really quickly. So this is sort of true and sort of false. It's true in the fact that absolutely there can be lots of information. It's really hard to know what to follow at any one time. But hopefully with the help of someone like a nutritionist or a dietitian, or by following or having good resources like Kidney Kitchen, who we're going to talk later, knowing where to go for information, that sort of confusion can feel a little bit easier, and people can be there to support you navigate that, and make sure that it doesn't feel as contradictory as it needs to be. Next, please. So the next is, so a good diet can reverse kidney problems. Now, firstly, what do we mean by good? I've used that word, but actually I've reflected, and maybe it's not the greatest word. Maybe we should be thinking about appropriate diets, or diets that are good for each individual. Can they reverse kidney problems? So it's really important to think about the fact that changing your diet may not mean that your kidneys are going to work back to 100%, or your kidney problems are going to go away. But it's really important to think of diet as a tool, as part of your treatment and protecting your kidneys, to help them work, as I said, as well as possible for as long as possible, but also to hopefully make you feel better, either by sort of feeling better in yourself, but also by symptom management. Some people may feel itchy, some people may feel tired, some people may feel weak, and good diets can help support you in that sort of treatment and keeping you as well and as strong as possible. Next. Thank you. And then this is to go back a little bit about what Louise and Amy were talking about before, the stigma around speaking to a nutritionist or a dietitian, or thinking about only unhealthy people need to have dietary advice. And firstly, what does unhealthy mean? And I think that's quite a stigmatizing word too, because fundamentally, no one's trying to be quote unquote unhealthy. And I think it's really important to think about what we eat, as well as we making choices that are best for ourselves at that time. And when it comes to dietitians or nutritionists, everyone with any type of sort of kidney problem can benefit if you want to speak to a dietitian. And this also is really important to say, that not everyone has to speak to a dietitian if you don't want to, because also what part of this is having some advice or some resources to know to go to for your information as well. But lots of people will be referred to the dietitians. And again, sometimes people say to me, okay, I thought what I was eating, let's go back to the bananas, I thought that was good for me. And it's not to say that that was a bad choice or what people are doing is wrong. So it's all about thinking about, we're there to help guide you and knowing what's best for you and your kidneys at that time, and if there are changes that can benefit you, or things that you might want more information on, or to help with, if that makes sense. Okay, next. So then how can a dietitian help me then? So I say dietitian here, you could use the word nutritionist, but most people will be referred to people within the NHS, within your renal services, and they will 9 times out of 10 be a dietitian. So first point is, so personalized dietary advice. So again, everyone's needs are different. And so just because somebody's got the same stage as kidney disease as somebody else, doesn't mean that their blood tests are the same. It doesn't mean that they like the same things. It's also really important to think about what somebody's priorities are. So somebody might just want to know, I go out every week down the pub, I just want to know what I can have to keep me safe, but I don't want to lose that as my quality of life and my personal time. So it's working about what are your needs, what's your diet, kidney condition, and how can we support you? provide and point in the direction of trusted resources. So again, going back to this idea that there's lots of information there. So help you navigate what's reliable, what's what we would call evidence-based, so based on strong science, and also might give you physical things or point in the direction of charities, webinars, websites, wherever it might be, to know that you're getting good information. And then really importantly, to help you navigate why and when your diet may need to change. So one of the aims of this webinar is to know that diet can change throughout somebody's kidney journey and kidney conditions. So things like how much fluid your body needs, or things like how much protein you need, or making other dietary restrictions. That can be very different for people when they've got chronic kidney disease or approaching or requiring something like dialysis, or have had a kidney transplant. And obviously for everyone, it can be a journey. So sometimes people can move from dialysis to transplant and things are changing all the time. And also your blood test might be changing, depends on how well you are, or other things that are going on. So it's really important we help navigate and help sort of empower and give people information of why your diet might need to change and when is it appropriate. So again, if I go back to the bananas, it might be a case of somebody doesn't need to look at their potassium in their diet because the levels are lovely, and then a few months down the line the levels start creeping up. So now is the time that we try and start talking about some restrictions. We don't want people to restrict things unless they need to. So what might personalized dietary advice look like? So it's also important to say at this point that sometimes people might see a nutritionist or a dietitian in a group setting, which is also a really wonderful way of learning, because also you're around others who you can share your experience with. But if you're having a one-to-one sort of dietary consultation, either face-to-face or it might be over the phone, then again, it goes back to what are your priorities? So somebody may say to me, well, okay, I'm not confident in the kitchen, or I've only got a microwave to use. What are my options there? Or somebody might say to me, it's really important that I'm able to sit down and eat the same things as my family. Can you give me some advice and support in that? So actually, it's not just about, hello, Mr. or Mrs. I've had a referral for you. Your blood tests say this, so now you need to do this. It's a collaboration. It's talking about what is your relationship with your food and your diet, and how can we help you to make sure that you're still getting that enjoyment, quality of life, and the best choices for you. There is going to be advice that is based on your kidney stage and your blood results. And again, we're going to help you navigate when you might need changes. Some people like to look at their blood results and know then what that means and to make changes for themselves, and other people don't. And that's absolutely fine. They just need to know what they need to do. So whatever works for you will help you navigate that. Advice on your likes and dislikes, because of course I could give everyone the same menu, but lots of people won't like half of that. There's no point. So we're working with you for what foods do you like, and do you need to, is there anything you could choose that for whatever reason may be better or may not be? We're working with you to what you like and what you can prepare. And then lastly, and most importantly, it's non-judgmental. And I think this, as going back to what Amy and Louise were saying, we all have a personal relationship with food. And sometimes you'll speak to a dietitian and they may ask you about things that, again, in society have got some stigmas attached to it. You may get asked about your alcohol, takeaways, portion sizes. And it's really important that we sort of ask those questions, but we're doing it so we can help you in the best way possible. And we're not looking to catch people out, and we're not looking to sort of judge people and think, oh goodness, that's no good. If you came to a dietetic office, I'm sure across the country you'll see we've all got plenty of cake and things, and we're not poster healthy people either. It's all about balance, and it's all about sort of giving people the knowledge that you can take home to empower yourselves. So we really want people to understand that you should never feel judged, and if you do, then please let us know, but that's never the intention. And yeah, we're really there to support you and work with you, and it's confidential and it's private, so but it can feel intimidating at times. We do appreciate that. So outside then of talking about personalized diet advice and saying not one size fits all, there are a few principles that everyone with kidney problems can follow. So trying to take away from this today possibly some practical tips, or give you an idea of the types of things that a dietitian may talk to you about. So the first thing is salt. The second thing is sort of eating a variety of foods, or a balanced diet, as it were. And the last thing is thinking about trying to limit or sort of think about processed foods a little bit. So we'll talk a little bit about salt first. So salt then. So if we think about salt, the reason why we would ask people to be wary of how much salt in their diet, and this goes for everyone, regardless actually of kidney problems, we know particularly in Western diets, so that's us in the UK, we eat quite a lot of salt, and a lot of that salt is hidden already in our food. And this can be problematic because when you eat salt, it goes into your blood, and salt has to live alongside water. So it pulls water into your bloodstream, and that can push your blood pressure up, and that can be damaging for your kidneys. And also for people with kidney problems, some people may be on fluid restrictions if you're not urinating as much as you used to be. And salt can make you feel very thirsty, so that can make fluid restrictions harder. So why we talk about salt, we want to talk about limiting to about 5 to 6 grams overall intake per day. That's all good and well. But I mean, even if I was pouring some salt out, I wouldn't know when to stop when it was 5 or 6 grams. So how do you find out how much salt is in your food? So there's a few tips we would say about when you're trying to limit. So firstly, we would say about avoiding salt alternatives. So what we mean by that is sometimes you can buy things such as low salt. So food companies now know that as a nation, we're trying to eat less salt and have less salt in our food. So salt is predominantly something called sodium chloride. And now what companies are doing are adding things like potassium chloride. So as we discussed earlier, potassium can be a problem for some people, and it can cause people's hearts to beat too fast if it's too high. So we would say that if you have a kidney or heart problem, then just if you are having salt, go for just normal table salt is better than choosing some alternatives to that. But the good thing is that when you're trying to reduce your salts, we'd always say start with what you put in your cooking or at the table. But things like herbs, spices, garlic, black pepper, lemon, all those things are wonderful and they're not harmful to your kidneys, so that's great. But trying to navigate knowing where salt is can be a little bit difficult sometimes. So you can use labels to see how much salt is in things. So generally speaking, we were looking at things per 100 grams of the product. So anything more than 1.5 grams per 100 will be high in salt, and anything less than 0.3 grams is low in salt. And sometimes with foods that we buy, you've got a traffic light system. But when you think of that, you also want to be thinking of how much of the food you're eating. So again, this may feel a little bit still a bit complicated. So this is why we've put the example of a food label up to show that if you're looking at so this is for a soup, per 100 grams, it's 0.5 grams of salt, which is a medium salt food. But depending on whether you're eating half the pot, so this here says half pot is 300 grams, therefore it's got 1.5 grams of salt in. But if you're someone who's got a larger appetite, then you might eat the whole pot, which would be 3 grams. So that would be half your salt allowance for the day, just from the soup. So it's just, again, that's not saying that that's a bad thing to eat, by no means, but it's knowing about how to gather the information to make choices for yourself about the foods you're eating. So that's how to read the salt labels on your foods. So the next thing we just wanted to touch on is sort of balanced diets. It's very cliche for a dietitian to tell you to eat a balanced diet, but it's a good one. So this is the Eat Well guide. So it's a government guideline. But what this demonstrates is that we all need a variety of things in our diet. Fruit and veg is really important. Again, as a cliche, I would say your 5 a day is still a great message and a really important one for people with kidney problems or kidney disease. Having sort of carbohydrates, but going for whole grains where possible. So things like brown breads, brown rices, possibly whole grain cereals, for example, is a really good choice. Having protein, and again, depends on kidney stage or how active you are. The recommendations on protein levels can differ. And we live in a world now where everything's got extra protein in, which for some people might be a bonus, but for some people it might be more than they need. So again, somebody like a dietitian can help you navigate that and what your needs are. By having a little bit of dairy, oils and spreads in small amounts, so that's your fats, and on the outside, sort of keeping things like the high sugar, high salt foods to a minimum where possible. And for somebody who isn't on a fluid restriction, making sure you're well hydrated is really important, which is usually about 6 to 8 glasses of fluid a day, unless you've been told that you need to drink less if you're retaining fluid. And again, dietitians can help you with that. So a little bit of a note on plant-based foods, and we put this on there because, again, if you look online, a lot of information about what's good for your kidneys is focused on potassium. So this is the thing that if it builds in your blood, can have an effect on your heart. And a lot of potassium is found in plant-based foods. But like we said before, it's really important to not limit things such as fruit, vegetables, beans, and pulses. So when we talk about pulses, we're talking about things like lentils, chickpeas, whole grains, unless you've been advised to do so. And that's because these things give you lots of vitamins, lots of minerals, lots of fiber, and also a diet that is rich in fruit and vegetables and plants can also help with some of the acid levels in your blood, which always sounds a little bit strange. I think sometimes we can think of fruit as being quite acidic, but we know now that the diets that are rich in plant-based foods can also be protective for that acid in your blood, and that can help your kidneys. So we don't want people to be limiting things unless you've been told to do so. And that might be because of potassium. If somebody's diabetic, then it might be that you've been told to limit things, particularly things like fruit juices, for example. So all that is relevant. So the other way that if you are still worried about how much plants or fruit and veg you should be having, then again, it goes back to, George, if you put two, lovely, and the next one. It can go back to just having sort of sensible portion sizes. So usually a portion size of fruit and vegetable usually looks about like 80 grams or a tablespoon or a handful of something. And also sort of cooking techniques like boiling vegetables can help reduce potassium, if you need to be careful about that. We would normally say one good boil and being careful of the portion size. So potatoes, for example, a good boil as per packet instructions, and then about 3 egg-sized potatoes is a good portion to give you what you need from that potato. And then again, that's being moderate with the potassium or whatever the needs might be without taking them completely out of your diet, because we want those fruits and vegetables to give you those minerals, fiber, great for your gut as well, and the bacteria in there. So again, just sort of emphasizing the point that fruit and veg are good for people with kidney disease, which previously there's been some mixed messages on. And then finally, then before we do a little summary, there's also a lot of information around about processed foods or ultra processed foods. Now, what do we mean by that? So anything processed or ultra processed generally are things made not outside the home or something that's been enhanced. Now, it's really difficult because these foods are everywhere and they make up a high proportion of Western diets. And they exist for a reason. They're also convenient, and can also sometimes be a lot cheaper. So we're going to talk at the end about not demonizing foods. But if we think about it, why we would ask people to potentially think about how much they're having or reduce where possible. The reason being is because these foods can be high in things like phosphate and potassium, and there's a list of sort of the E numbers there. These things are added often for flavor. They can be added in terms of what we call stability or to enhance the shelf life of a food. And because they've been added to your food, you can absorb them really easy into your blood. So again, for people who do need to be careful of phosphate and potassium, then processed foods we would ask people to limit especially. They can also be very high in salt, again, for flavour and for the shelf life improvement. The other thing with processed foods is that they can be high in calorie, so energy, but low in things such as fibre. So often this can lead to overeating. They're also often designed to be very pleasurable. And again, but lots of us do have different relationships with food, and sometimes people can comfort eat, and these things also are very readily available. Often the things that are on offer, we live in a world where these are everywhere now. So it can be very hard to navigate and take them out of our diet completely. So that's not the expectation. But if that's what you want to do or can do it, then wonderful. But we're not going to demonize that if you can't. So cooking from scratch is always preferable if possible. But for lots of reasons, things aren't possible for people. Either that's because of equipment, confidence. Sometimes people haven't got the dexterity or the ability to stand around in the kitchen or the cooker. So for lots of reasons, that might not be suitable for somebody. So again, a dietitian or a nutritionist can help point you in the direction of choices that are appropriate for you, or things like batch cooking, or making some tweaks that will help reduce the amount of processed foods in your diet as appropriate for you and reliable for you, reasonable for you, sorry. So yes, as to say, it's really important that no foods are completely demonized, because again, it's going back to this idea that we all have a different relationship with food and diets. And I don't really like categorizing foods as good and bad. I think everything can have a place. It's all about the balance. But sometimes it's people need a little bit more support in knowing how to navigate that balance or get to a better balance than where they're at. And timing is really important as well. And sort of making changes that you want to make, not just because you've been told to do so. Some things with kidney disease can be a bit more dangerous, like the potassium. But again, it's all about making sure that you're as safe as possible and having the information to make changes that you understand and are manageable for you. And it's really important that we're talking to people when they're ready for information as well, because otherwise people can struggle to make changes that are sustainable or realistic. We don't like crash diets or things like that either. So it's all about sustainable, small goals and leading hopefully to an overall bigger and better picture. I'm rambling a bit now, so let's summarize. So in summary, diet is an important part of keeping people as well as possible with kidney disease. And as I said, it's one of those tools alongside dietary advice, blood tests, other lifestyle, psychological support, physio support, wherever it might be. It's a part of that treatment package. There's no one size fits all, but there are some things we discussed that people can consider generally to support their kidneys. Dietitians and nutritionists, but as I said, in the NHS, you will find that it's predominantly dietitians are there to support patients make dietary choices that are right for you, not necessarily right for the person next to you, but the things that you need to think about right here, right now. And definitely, dietary advice can change as somebody's kidney function changes. So we're there to help you navigate that when things are appropriate and why things are appropriate to change. I think that's it.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Kay.
So
I'm going to open the floor now to see if anybody has any questions for Kay. So is there anybody? Feel free just to put your mics on and go ahead and ask a question.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, carry on.
Thank you. Are you saying that it's better to boil the veg instead of steam it?
So generally speaking, it depends again if what your potassium levels would be. But if we're trying to sort of risk assess, then yes. So what happens when you boil vegetables, potassium particularly, so other things as well, but predominantly potassium was going to go into the water. And then generally we would say to people to not use that water for gravy, so just use kettle water for things like gravy. But then you'll have a lower potassium vegetable. So some vegetables are higher in potassium than others. the most important thing is usually potatoes. Over Christmas, things like sprouts and parsnips as well. And there's contradictory advice out there. Lots of advice you might see will say double boil things, or soak things and then boil them, whatever it might be. We tend to say just one sort of good boil, and thinking about sort of the portion size, but that goes for everyone, for everything. But if you steam something, yes, you're not going to release things like potassium, but not everyone needs to be careful with potassium all the time. So if we were going to give blanket advice around vegetables, that's what we would give, but it's not as black and white as that always.
Thank you.
No worries.
Lovely. Does anybody else have any other questions?
Yeah, me, if that's okay.
Yeah.
I bounce between stage 3A, 3B. Mine's due to an ultra-rare blood cancer and fibrosis. Is it worth getting dietitian advice at that level of chronic kidney disease?
I would say yes. I think often where we see people now is usually at stages 4 and 5. And often we're doing, so I remember I said about 2 parts about that prevention and sort of supportive piece, and then that managing the consequences of kidney disease. In an ideal world, everyone would be seen by a dietitian earlier, so we can give you as much preventative support as possible. And again, going back to the thing, it may not be the thing that stops your kidneys progressing or reverses any type of kidney disease, but we certainly can make sure you've got as many tools as possible to keep yourself as well as possible for as long as possible, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
so I would definitely think that I wish actually that we could be doing more preventative pieces, and it's just about capturing people. How do we capture people at the right time? And this is why events like this are wonderful, because if nothing else, you'll have a little bit of information to take home, but also know where to go, particularly Kidney Care UK, who's coming on next, for extra information to keep yourself safe. But if you're under a nephrologist or a kidney doctor, or even with the GP, I would encourage anyone who is interested and wants to know more to ask for a referral into your local dietetic service, because I don't think it can never be too early, I don't think. But it depends on individuals wanting that and being ready to.
Yeah, I'm under a hematologist for the blood cancers, and I have been via nephrology, but they discharged me because my kidney levels are stable and not low enough for them, which is obviously a good thing. So I'll look at asking him to maybe refer me on. Thank you very much.
No worries at all.
That's great, thank you. Was there any other questions? Not a problem. I will just add on to there as well that there will be a sort of patient pack available on the Kidney Wales website to go alongside this webinar. And in there will be a few different things. There'll be a few slides with helpful resource links, one being obviously to the Kidney Kitchen, who are going to join us in a second, and other places that you can get some information around whether it is diet or if it's specific recipes, or if you're just looking to have a bit of more of an understanding on why it's important. There's some resources available there. And we've also collected some questions to ask your nutritionist. I do appreciate that if you've been a part of this webinar and you've decided that the next step for you is to go and speak to a dietitian or a nutritionist, but you don't know where to begin, you don't know what questions to ask, there's a few questions in there that can just help prompt you to just have that initial conversation, if that was something that anyone was interested in. So that will be sent in an email out to you as well, so you can find that, but it will also be on our website as well. So if there are no more questions, I will move on to Lindsay from Kidney Care UK.
Thank you, Georgia. So, hi everyone. As you've already heard, I'm Lindsay. I work for Kidney Care UK. I am a patient support and advice officer, so I help people with all sorts of issues, but for the next 10 minutes, I will talk to you all about our resources to help you with diet and nutrition. So next slide, please, Georgia. Okay, so over the next few minutes, we'll cover the following questions like why do we have the Kidney Kitchen? Who contributes to it? Where will you find the Kidney Kitchen? How do you access it? I think those are one and the same question, actually. And how else can Kidney Care UK support me? And if I've done my job correctly, at the end of this presentation, you should have all the answers to those questions. So, as you've already heard, we all have our own relationship with food. We all celebrate with food. We know we have social gatherings around food. In a couple of weeks' time, we're all going to be eating the biggest meal of the year, probably. And we know that that doesn't change when you've got chronic kidney disease or any other health issue, in fact, that just because you have been diagnosed with chronic kidney disease, you still will more than likely look forward to food. And that's why we have decided to create the Kidney Kitchen. So rather than focusing on foods that you can't eat or maybe foods you should cut down on, we just want to highlight some tasty recipes that are available that you can enjoy, that have all been approved by kidney dietitians and nutritionists. And I will tell you a little bit more now. So next slide, please. So we've been working with the kidney dietitian specialist group of the British Dietetics Association, that was a mouthful, since 2018 on the Kidney Kitchen. And to date, we have over 220 recipes. We are continuously adding to them. I think we've got at least another 40 that are ready to go onto our website. And they have been put together by 14 chefs and guest chefs. So in this picture are our two main chefs, Paul and Lizzie. And we've also had guest chefs such as the Michelin star chef Nathan Outlaw, 2023's MasterChef winner. The name escapes me, but I can see her, but that doesn't help you. And also we've had guest chefs such as a few kidney consultants, nurses, kidney patients, young adult patients. And we have 2 guest chefs from Wales coming up in the next couple of months that you'll be able to see. So we have a large collection of recipes from a large group of chefs. Next slide, please. And what kind of recipes will you find on the Kidney Kitchen? Well, we're constantly expanding them. My little diagram here shows the kind of cuisines that we have currently. Predominantly, they are European kind of dishes, so British dishes, based mainly on the fact that we tend to consume a lot of British or European foods in the UK, but we've been expanding that. We've got Southeast Asian food by Southeast Asian chefs. We've got Caribbean food, African food. We also cater to certain diets, such as being gluten-free, or if somebody is vegetarian or vegan, we have a lot of recipes that suit those diets as well. And we also have a lot of special or celebratory meals. So we have desserts, we have Christmas recipes, we've had Halloween recipes a few weeks ago. We've even got a few drink recipes. I think they're all non-alcoholic, but there are some, treat drinks, shall we say. And what we have done is that we are constantly adding to them. And we even have some Christmas recipes, I probably mentioned that already, that you can find on our website. So lots of different things to explore. Next slide, please. So all of our recipes are the same in that we have this information that you can see a little snapshot of on the side. And we will identify if something is gluten-free, if it's low in fat, low in potassium. We can't work out the exact levels of potassium in things, for example, but we can do that with carbohydrates, which can be particularly helpful if you have diabetes and you need to count your carbohydrates to manage your insulin. And we also put energy values on there, such as calories. If you follow the recipe with the quantities that we've stated, that is a very good estimate of calories. But if you're like me, you might tweak a recipe sometimes, make it a little bit bigger or add a bit more of an ingredient. That is just a guideline. So the calorie content and carbohydrate might change. And what we've started doing in recent years is that we've also added the price per portion on there, because we understand that the cost of food is not getting any cheaper. And sometimes it can be hard to eat lots of fresh home cooked meals while also sticking to a budget. So that's why we put the price per portion on there too. And as well as all of that nutritional information, we will also have tips on every recipe for how you can store it. And so can you freeze it? Can you defrost it? Can you part bake it and then continue maybe the next day for more complex recipes. We have tips such as how you can make it healthier. So for example, rather than using a chicken thigh, you could swap it for chicken breasts, and that makes it a little bit less fat content. We have tips to make something a cheaper option, or how to adapt it to your needs. So for example, if somebody can't eat gluten, but we have a recipe with wheat flour, we might suggest putting rice flour in it instead, but then the calorie content would change slightly. So there's all of our recipes always have lots of different adaptations that you can make to suit your own needs. Next slide, please. And I don't know if this little clip will play, but I just screen recorded myself just flicking through the website on my phone, because most of us view these kinds of websites on our phones these days. But you can also access it on a tablet, on a computer, and it always fits the screen. But as you can see, we have lots of different recipes as tiles that you can click on, and they open up into the full recipe. And you can also search at the top of the page to narrow it down to cuisine or course, or if you wanted to filter for how long it takes to cook something. And you can just browse for information. There's about 20 pages, so it takes a little bit of browsing. If you know a specific item, you can search for it. And all of our recipes, when you click on them, are available to download as recipe cards. So if you didn't want to view it on the website, but you wanted to see a little PDF card of it with all of the information, you could use that to print it if you want. You can view it from there if you didn't want to be using the internet to do it. So you can see it on the website or in a recipe card. Next slide, please. And this isn't a clickable link, you'll be glad to know. But we also have a YouTube channel where a majority of our recipes have been filmed with the chef, and you will see the step-by-step. So if you're like me, I can't purely read a recipe. I need to see it being done, because sometimes when someone will say, julienne, your carrots, and I'm thinking, what is that? Is that rounds? Is it batons? So sometimes seeing someone do something rather than just reading it can help you follow the recipe a little bit better. So if you've wanted to, if you just search Kidney Care UK on YouTube, then we have lots of different channels on there, but we have a section completely devoted to our kidney kitchen recipes. And if you prefer not to access your recipes online, we also have free magazines. We've currently got 4 magazines, each of them containing around 20 to 24 recipes per magazine. They are completely free of charge for all kidney patients or family members of kidney patients, but we do make that free by charging a very small delivery fee to hospital units that order them in bulk. And the themes that we have out so far are Eat Well, Spend Less, which is all about shopping for a specific shopping list, and then we've got 21 recipes from there based on all of those ingredients to reduce food waste but also shop to a budget. We have Safe Weight Loss for those that need to follow a kidney friendly diet but would also like to lose weight while doing so. So there are some recipes that suit both of those requirements. We have Classic Recipes, which is just an assortment of all of our favorite classic recipes. And we have South Asian recipes, which we work together with the South Asian community of patients and NHS staff members to put that together. So this is the image that you can see. There's lots of different curries, desserts, drinks in there. And in early 2025, we've got 2 new recipe magazines coming out. We've got African and Caribbean recipes. And we've also got family favourites, which name on the tin, all of the things that the families enjoy. So next slide, please. But we don't just do recipes. So I touched upon it slightly when I mentioned our YouTube videos earlier, but we also have a series of videos on our website and on the YouTube channel that shows you a few basic kitchen skills. So julienne in a carrot, I didn't know that until not so long ago. I'm not embarrassed to say that. But some people don't know how to chop an onion. Maybe some people can't tell when pasta's cooked, especially if you forget to set the timer, which I'm also guilty of. So we have a series of videos that can help get you started with some kitchen skills just to build a bit of confidence, so that when you see in a written recipe, it says, do this, chop the onions, you'll think, okay, how do I do that now? Or it might even give you some tips about how to do it more effectively. And on our website, we also have nutritional advice from kidney dietitians. So it's very similar messaging to what Kay has already shared with you, all of the basics, try to eat a balanced diet, try to reduce salt, try to avoid processed foods. So we have all of that information on our website too. And next slide, please. Now, you might think, where do I start with this? So I'm going to give you my 3 favorite recipes just because I like to talk about them. So if you don't know where to start first, I highly recommend the fish goujon tacos if you love Mexican food like me. Indian spice beans if you also like a baked bean and you work from home and want something nice and warm at lunchtime in the winter. Or shakshuka, which is eggs. It's like a lunch brunch dish. I think it's from North Africa. Eggs poached in a tomatoey, oniony sauce. That's quite nice. But we want to know what your favorite recipes are, because obviously we want to know what's going well, what do we want more of. So if you try any of our recipes and you use social media, if you follow us on social media, or even if you see one of us in a unit or, in a hospital somewhere, let us know what your favorite is. And we love to know, because we all have our favorites in the office and we like to know if we actually have the favorite for the patients as well. So if you want to catch us on any of our social media, as well as YouTube, it's just at Kidney Care UK across all of them. And I think my final slide is coming up next. Yeah. So just a little bit to finish off my little presentation is that although this is a webinar all about diet and nutrition, at Kidney Care UK, we don't just support with diet and nutrition, such as the Kidney Kitchen and the magazines. We also have a lot of other support that I can help you with, or one of my colleagues across Wales. So if you wanted help with anything on this screen, such as financial support, just accessing information, holidays and respite breaks, you're always welcome to get in touch with us. And all of our contact details will be on the support pack that Georgia sends out later on. And after that, I'll just say if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them. If not, I can follow up afterwards. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much for that. Before we wrap up, did anybody have any questions for Lindsay at all today? Or any questions at all that they didn't ask earlier on?
Oh, hi, it's Maya here. Actually, Lindsay, I haven't actually got a question, but I just want to say I do use your recipes and I think they're really helpful.
Oh, lovely.
I think what I find that I like about them is things that I feel I should not be having. For example, like the tomato side things, your recipes include them in the right amount, if that makes sense. So you feel you're having something you shouldn't be having, but you can have it, which is a bonus. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I agree. And one thing that we do put on our little descriptions for all the recipes, that sometimes we will include ingredients or dishes that are a bit higher in potassium than you could or should eat every day. So we will always mark them, that if we think that they're a special occasion dish, like maybe it's a little bit higher in potassium or phosphates, we'll mark that on there so that you know that, yeah, okay, I can eat that, but maybe I'll eat it once in a while, not daily, like, some of us are guilty of with all our processed foods. But thanks, Maya.
Yeah, welcome.
So can I add on to what Maya said as well? Because I'm really glad that's your experience, because as dietitians, the Kidney Kitchen has been an absolute blessing, because I think we're very guilty of just saying, it's fine, just have it in moderation, or just limit that, just have a little less. But actually, that's not particularly practical when somebody's sitting down to eat. Like, what does the word moderation mean? What does limit mean? So we use exactly as Maya was saying, we tell patients, we say, so for example, tomatoes is a great example. A lot of information says, again, go back to potassium. I'm not trying to demonize that there, but people say, oh, I can't eat tomatoes. I've been told I should avoid those. But then we can always point to, like, always point to a bolognese recipe, for example, on the Kidney Kitchen website to say, it's not saying don't have things with tomatoes in, but it's thinking about how much tomato you put into something and how many portions does it make. That's the difference. And the Kidney Kitchen is a beautiful way of sort of marrying up support or advice you may get from someone like a dietitian and helping you make practical menu choices afterwards. So yeah, we love it. And we have, and again, sometimes your centres, your dietitians may have some of those magazines and resources they can send out too.
Oh, can I just also say one of my favourite recipes, sorry, seeing that we're approaching the festive season, is your replacement mincemeat recipe.
Oh, really? I've not tried that one yet myself, but I'm not a massive mincemeat fan.
Well,
Would you recommend it then?
I love mincemeat, so obviously I've got potassium issues, so it's just really is no, don't eat it. Okay, maybe in moderation, but avoid it, you know. But your replacement recipe it's really good. It's a good replacement.
Oh, good. I might give it a try sometime this month then.
Yes, and my wife made some as well. But excellent.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? Yeah.
That is
Oh,
amazing
thank
to
you
hear
both.
that so many of you are already using the Kidney Kitchen. And I hope, having listened to everything here today, it's also filling you with more confidence that if these are some of the things that you're already doing, that you are on the right track. Some people here today might not need to make any changes or might not want to make any changes. They might just find this just a reassuring chat, which is what we intended for it to be, just a little bit of a chat, really, to let you know that the support is there and there is no judgment and there's no problem in saying, actually, I want some help, or just having a bit more of an understanding into what we are eating and the benefits of looking at our diet, either with nutritionists or just personally looking at our diet ourselves. I think everyone can benefit from that, whether you're a kidney patient or not. Did anybody else have any final questions? Amazing. In which case, I'll just start to wrap up a little bit. I just wanted to say thank you, everybody, for joining. And I know we've talked a lot about different foods, but we are in a cost of living crisis. So one of the things I did just want to mention and sort of point out is that Kidney Wales do offer £150 food and wellbeing vouchers. So there will be a link in the PDF document that I've mentioned where you can go onto our website and learn a little bit more about that. But as we're hearing about different foods that we can be having, and we know how expensive that is, it's a little something for kidney patients to help support them with those costs, whether you decide you want to use the £150 food voucher in one go, or if you want to use it just £20 here and there just to help with your weekly shopping. It's just something that we have available to kidney patients to help support them, really. So if that is something you're interested in, please have a look in that PDF document or just head straight over to our website and that'll be available for you there. Thank you, everybody, for joining, and thank you to all our guest speakers for coming and speaking with us today.